Welcome to a Monday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside, still in Boston, hasn't left yet, our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, and in our Florida studios, Ashley Nicole Moss. And man, gang, we got to get right into it. Jam-packed show today. Later on, we're going to get to the NBA Finals. But first, we have breaking news. The Lakers coaching search continues, according to Woj over at ESPN. Dan Hurley turned down a 6-year, $70 million offer to stay in Connecticut. It would have made him one of the six highest paid coaches in the NBA. He wants to return and try to win a third straight national title at UConn. It hasn't been done since John Wooden at UCLA. Bill, we'll go to you first. What are you hearing and what do you make of this decision?
I'm not as surprised as I should be because over the weekend talked to a few folks, including somebody who had talked to Hurley as he was going into his Lakers meeting on Friday, who said there was a good chance he was going to turn it down. But frankly, John and Ash, I found that at the time hard to believe because it's such a public courtship by the Lakers. And then you get to the position yesterday where Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN reports that Hurley is going to let the world know and the Lakers know whether he's turned down the job. And you get to this point we're at now, which is this is an embarrassment for the Los Angeles Lakers. They've been publicly turned down by a college coach, whether you thought he would be successful or not. And as Ash and I just talked about on HQ, now you got to go try to find, is it JJ Redick? Is it Borrego? Who are you looking at? They are the second option. I thought Ashley made an amazing point about how you've also put out there what you're willing to pay this guy, which I hadn't even thought of. And so now you've got this negotiation problem. But I will say this, Ash, and I will say this, John. I do think there's a potential dodge bullet here for everybody involved. I know that Hurley is celebrated. He should be. People love what he's done at the college level, but it's very rare that guys succeed making that jump from college to the pros. And it's not easy if you have an expectation or a history of really being a control freak, which he is. That's great. It's worked. And trying to do that with LeBron James. So maybe despite the fact it's going to set the Lakers search back a little bit, there are certainly plenty of people here over the weekend who thought Hurley with LA were going to be two really good situations, like a great coach and a really good, obviously, organization for years that maybe wouldn't be a good fit for each other. So maybe it is of a blessing in disguise here as the Lakers have some egg on their face.
Yeah, I agree completely. And also you have to take into consideration when talking about Dan Hurley, he's an East Coast guy, his family's there, his history is there predominantly on the East Coast. It's not an easy transition. I know we make jokes all the time on this podcast about being the East Coast girl here and you guys on the West Coast. It's not easy to go ahead and pick up your life and go from coast to coast like that. Drastically different, way to adapt to living. It's drastically different for your family to adapt. It's just not an easy thing to go ahead and just completely change the course of your life in that regard, right? But when you talk about being a head coach, there's a reason why we haven't seen that transition be very successful. You go from dealing with young men who you're really responsible for helping to mold and develop into, if they decide to be NBA players, and you're going to dealing with grown men with families, with responsibilities. A lot of those players already kind of stuck in their ways. And when you talk about the Los Angeles Lakers, you add another layer of media microscope, of scrutiny, of expectation, and expectation that is semi-unrealistic with the way they have looked over the course of multiple seasons. You put all those things in a pot, and it's not necessarily the ingredients for success, and we have seen that time and time again with the Lakers. There's a reason in 10 seasons they're on 5 different head coaches. Unrealistic expectations for the Lakers. Dan Hurley has a very specific way of dealing with his guys in UConn. That's not going to fly in the NBA. LeBron James is not somebody you coach. He's somebody you collaborate with. And I don't know if any head coach that's already been winning in some regard, whether college or professional, wants to deal with that. Dan Hurley made a business decision, and for him, the opportunity to go ahead and run things back with UConn and be in the conversation with John Wooden is a lot more appetizing than dealing with just the mess that is in LA right now.
But what does that say about the Lakers, right? I mean, yeah, he made a business decision, and he was already evidently reportedly in talks with UConn to become one of the highest paid head coaches in college basketball. But this thing the ebbs and flows of this thing I find very interesting because it came on real hot out of nowhere, where all of a sudden Dan Hurley is being targeted, and then he met in person with the Lakers, spent Friday with Rob Pelinka. They told him that they want him around not just for the LeBron and the AD era, but for afterwards. And it seemed like with a 6-year commitment that they were really deciding, okay, this is going to be our guy moving forward. And then he decides he would rather live. Look, yes, moving is difficult. I've moved across the country many times. Nobody offered me $70 million to do a move. That makes it a lot easier. what does it say about the Los Angeles Lakers that he would rather live in Storrs, Connecticut and coach a college team than a team was at present tied for the most championships ever with 17. And that just blows me away. How down bad are the Lakers right now?
It's not just a college team, though. It's one of the college teams when we talk about,
it's not the Lakers.
But it's UConn. I mean, he's not coaching no shade.
He's not in
It's in Storrs, Connecticut.
It's UConn, though.
I mean, it's more recently a very impressive college program. Yes, no doubt about it. But it's still a college program. All I'm saying is we're talking about one of the preeminent franchises, not just in the NBA, but in all of sports. And he said, no thanks, I'd rather remain in college.
Because but John, it's not that organization anymore. I mean, okay, there's banners on the wall. He can buy a ticket, first class flight to LA, look at the banners, say those are cool, and go back home. And we know this. Think about how many teams in the Western Conference. If you're Dan Hurley, and obviously he sized up everything, and you're thinking, okay, I gotta go through with LeBron and AD for a year or two. I'm not gonna win with those guys. Then I gotta rebuild, and what is the pressure to trade? What'll be this summer 3 first-round picks to get LeBron help? That takes away my ability to build for the future. I've got a Thunder team, a Dallas team, and a Minnesota team that's light years ahead of me and already able to win. Memphis has everybody coming back. The Spurs are going to be amazing. I would argue Utah is much better run than the Los Angeles Lakers. Like, if Houston's better run and has some young people. So I think, like, sure, it's the Lakers. It's also the 8th to 10th best run or most promising Western Conference team, if as much as you project out 5 years. I think that's a big part of it. I think he probably had the self-awareness, and that's hard to say. And I'm sure he's an egomaniac. You can't be one of the best coaches of all time in anything without being really confident. But he had the self-awareness to say, I can't win with that organization. It may not work. And if you're Hurley and you fail, you're going to be one of many cautionary tales. Is Billy Donovan a success story? I mean, Billy Donovan's a success story for Billy Donovan, but he's not with the team that hired him, the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's a Bull now. So I think it's actually really, you're right, insightful on what the Lakers are, and they may have a glorious past, but obviously Dan Hurley does not think they have a certain glorious future, and I think that's a big part of his decision making here.
Honestly,
this is my point, that the Lakers are down so bad right now. Like, they can't. Everything that you guys are saying is absolutely right. Like, it's hard for them to win moving forward, despite the fact that they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The conference is absolutely loaded. It's not the Lakers of yesteryear. I think this is just a massive indictment of what the Lakers have become.
I think also, I mean, adding a little bit to Bill's point, I don't even know if it's so much what the Lakers will be post-LeBron that turned him off, because if you talk about a college coach, they're used to a lot of turnover. Guys don't stay in, college programs forever. And player development and helping to mold and craft young men into professional players, again, if that's what they choose to become, is part of the job. So I don't even think it was, getting his hands dirty with the young core. I think it's what the Lakers are currently. And what they are currently is a LeBron James focused team where LeBron has a lot of say-so, whether he admits it or not. You're coming into a situation where there are certain things that are going to happen to keep him happy. There are rumors that Bronny may be drafted by the organization to keep LeBron happy. That will then be a player that you are stuck with, a player you didn't have any say-so in drafting because that status quo was kind of already there before you took the job. So for me, it's not. And then on top of the fact, this is a team that, although it's very unrealistic, they expect themselves to be in the championship conversation this time next season. So it's not even so much about what the Lakers could be after LeBron leaves, because I feel like for a college coach or a coach who really wants to be part in remolding the Lakers, that's exciting. It's about what they are right now and what the expectations are for them right now to be, that I feel like turns a lot of people off, especially if you're a coach who actually wants to coach.
I know we got a break, so I'll just 10 seconds. Ash just made me think of this. Maybe his plan is just to wait till Redick gets fired in 2 years for all the reasons Ash said and take the Lakers' job then.
That's also a bad idea. I think you guys are right. He should stay in Connecticut. By the way, I'm going to be in Connecticut later this week at our HQ studios there. So I'll compare and contrast notes and let you guys know which one I like better, LA or Connecticut. But we do have to take a break, and we have so much more to get into on this topic and then also the NBA Finals. So we're going to pick it up and discuss where should the Lakers go now that Dan Hurley has passed. That's coming up on Beyond the Arc right here on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. You can also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave us a review. It helps people find us. So no Dan Hurley. He's not going to the Lakers. He's staying in beautiful, sunny Connecticut. Who could blame him? But actually, they still need a head coach. And initially, it was reported that J.J. Redick was the front runner. Mm-hmm. Is he again now the front runner, do you think? Should he take this job? Should he even want it after it looked like it was his and they yanked it away from him?
I'm going to tell you guys a story, okay? It's a short story. Once upon a time, there was this guy that I had a huge crush on, right? I wasn't good enough for him, or so he says, back in the day. Then my career started to really start going, and he started to see me on TV and things like that. And the girl that he chose over me, no longer he wanted that girl, and now he wanted to come back to me. But I remembered exactly how it felt when he chose that girl over me and didn't see the potential of what I could be, what I would be, and what ultimately I am right now. So if I'm JJ Redick is me, I should say, in this situation. And Dan Hurley is the girl that this guy, who should remain nameless, chose over me. So if I'm JJ Redick, I am no longer interested in the Los Angeles Lakers now that they've decided to spin the block. And now all of a sudden the girl you actually wanted is no longer and shiny and sparkly and new and golden like you thought she was. And now I'm your consolation prize. Let me make something very clear to you, gentlemen, okay? I am nobody's consolation prize. You choose me first or you don't choose me at all. So JJ, know your worth, my guy. One day a situation will come around and they will choose you first, and you will be the only option that they want and not the option because the option they really wanted didn't want them. And that is the moral of my story. Choose yourself first and know your worth. And if this guy is watching, I laugh at you.
Let me offer a counterpoint. That J.J. Redick is no Ashley Nicole Moss. He might be more of a Bill Ryder, because actually I had a similar experience in college. Freshman year, really into this girl, wasn't into me. She was senior year, and I had the same reaction that you just did. And in retrospect, my plan wasn't to marry her, but that might have been fun to, like, spend some time together, hang out, go to the bar, go to the Heidelberg in Columbia, Missouri. Before I got married, I might have enjoyed, spending some time with that young lady. So JJ doesn't have to be forever. Your feelings might be hurt. You're not Ashley Nicole Moss. You may not have a whole bunch of suitors beating a path to your door. I say go for it. There aren't many jobs out there. The worm can turn quickly when you're the hot thing versus when you're not. He's got a relationship with LeBron James, and if you get in that coaching carousel, usually you get to stay in that coaching carousel. So I hear you, Ash, and I think your logic is right for you, but JJ Redick ain't no Ashley Nicole Moss, and I think you should take the job.
I don't have any tales of unrequited love like the two of you. However, I do. What you're both saying makes sense. On the one hand, if I was JJ, I'd be like, hey, I thought it was our gig. We discussed it. It looked like it was my job. And then all of a sudden it comes Dan Hurley. But Bill makes a really good point. There's only 30 of these jobs. And despite the fact that the Lakers brand and team is much diminished, it is still the Los Angeles Lakers. And you do have a relationship with LeBron James, who remains probably the greatest player ever. That's hard to pass up because, look, me personally, if I'm him, I would just stay with my media empire that I'm building. He's off to a very hot start there, and I'm sure that all of his employees, many of whom I used to work with at The Ringer, would love for him to stay put. But he obviously wants to get into coaching. He talked to the Raptors previously. He talked to the Hornets previously. The Lakers are a more attractive job than those two gigs. So if he really wants to get into coaching, if they come back to him, I wouldn't blame him.
But I am also interested, right? Because let's talk about this now that I got my story out of the way. Let's look at this from a different perspective, right? Darvin Ham's a perfect example right now. Just joined the Milwaukee Bucks as the top assistant to Doc Rivers. When you talk about J.J. Redick, we all know there's a very short leash when it comes to this Los Angeles Lakers job because the expectations for the team are unrealistic, but to them, they are very possible. For whatever reason that may be, they are very possible, right? When you talk about taking this job, there has to be in the back of your mind some sort of knowledge that you know that you're going into a situation where there is unrealistic expectations, but that doesn't mean you're not supposed to produce results. And if you don't produce results, we have seen what that has meant for other coaches of the past. If I am J.J. Redick, that's a lot of eggshells to walk on with my first head coaching job. We're not talking about a guy who has been in the trenches, in the NBA coaching circle, carousel, for X amount of time. This is your first time to go ahead and make an impression and show the world I can go ahead and do this. And you're putting yourself in almost a lose-lose situation or a win-lose situation. Win, yeah, everyone will say, oh, it's not really JJ coaching, it's JJ and LeBron, so you don't even get all the credit. If you lose, this is the first time that you'll be in a position and then you go ahead and get fired. I wonder what that would mean then for his opportunities with other teams in the league. Is this like a one and done situation? We have seen some coaches never get head coaching opportunities again after failing with the organization, whether the expectations were real or not. There have been situations where they've never had a head coach position again. That's a tricky line to walk if you're JJ Redick and this is your first time doing it.
I think being on the right side of LeBron James, though, helps you, because the best example of what you're citing, Ash, is David Blatt, who was also a risky hire. He was supposed to coach a young team and build long-term when he came from abroad. LeBron came in a surprise to Cleveland. LeBron did not like David Blatt. David Blatt didn't like anybody who didn't think David Blatt wasn't the smartest guy in every room in a 400-mile radius, and it didn't work out. I'll say this, too, about the Lakers situation that I find interesting. And I know we should be talking about J.J. Redick because he's the next guy up. Hiring J.J. Redick and hiring Dan Hurley are very different visions, I think, for what you want your organization to be. And so in a lot of ways, this just speaks to the fact, with all respect to folks who work for the Lakers and friends of mine who are associated with that organization, I'm not sure they know what the hell they're doing. They are an absolute mess. I mean, J.J. Redick is a high-risk reward ratio guy, as is Dan Hurley, but for vastly different reasons. So, look, should they hire Redick? I think in a vacuum it makes sense for a lot of reasons. If your plan is to focus on the next year or two, make LeBron happy, trade away some of those assets to bring in help for LeBron this year, maybe presumably next year, and sort of double down. I think it's an unrealistic bet, but double down on LeBron and AD and whatever you can bring in and whatever remains on the roster. That's a J.J. Redick hire. But that's not what you were building toward when you're trying to give Dan Hurley a bunch of years and planning post-LeBron. So I think first the Lakers probably should figure out what in the hell they're doing, come up with an actual vision, and then execute that.
Yeah, the Lakers really cast a wide net on this thing, right? I mean, you're right. Those are two really different directions. And I think maybe I guess two things could be true at once, right? You could be attracted to bring it back to the relationship analogy that you guys were talking about. I guess you could be attracted to two different people at the same time and then not know what you actually want in your life.
Better make the right choice,
that's
John.
One who wants to get married.
Better make the right choice.
One who wants to just hang out for 2 months. One is like, I met you on Hinge. The other is, would you like to meet my parents? They're very different sort of goals.
I luckily missed the dating app scene, thankfully. So I wasn't on Hinge or any of that, thank God. Quick question for you guys. Ash, you mentioned Darvin Ham going to Milwaukee to be the assistant under Doc, a situation that this past season obviously did not work out well for the Bucks. They had a lot of injury issues. Doc didn't acquit himself well. Darvin got canned, and now he's an assistant. Would you rather be an assistant in that scenario, or be whoever the new head coach is for the Lakers?
Well, I mean, the head coach gets more glory if the Lakers do well, right? And that only helps you. If you're the assistant, the glory always goes to the head coach. Nobody cares about what the assistant goes ahead and does, even if the assistant is the brains behind the operation. So you always want to be head coach, but with that, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And there's a lot that comes with that Lakers job that's more than just what happens on the court and more than just what happens in 4 quarters of basketball. And it's definitely not an easy position to be in. So if JJ takes it, I wish him all the best because I do think he's extremely smart. I do think he knows the game well. And I do think if he's in the right situation, he could be a great head coach. The Lakers is just, there's a lot of risk and there's some reward, but it's like, do you want to take that gamble? I guess he does.
Yeah, I mean, Darvin and JJ are in vastly different parts of their careers. Darvin's trying to avoid what Ash was talking about, being a one and done head coach. So whatever, look, am I the president of the Doc Rivers fan club? Probably not. But Doc Rivers, his coaching tree, there's a lot of success of guys who have come off that tree and gone on to be head coaches and have careers. So that's a bonus if you're him. You obviously have a familiarity with that organization. If you're looking for a place that maybe you can buy stock a little bit low, it might be the Milwaukee Bucks. The East is not going to be brutal like the West. And so they have success as the top assistant. You get a look. Ham is just trying to figure out how he gets back to being a head coach someday. I think Milwaukee makes sense in that context. Again, I'll just say J.J. Redick, I'm not sure I want to be a Laker, but there aren't many of these jobs. And when you have a chance for your first head coaching job, you probably should take it if you don't have other options.
Yeah, that was kind of the impetus behind my question was like, which scenario do you, obviously you'd rather be the head coach and get the head coach money, but in terms of like which team and
I take the
organization is better
Lakers.
suited to achieve moving
Oh,
forward,
no, it's Milwaukee.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Milwaukee's got Giannis and they're in the East, as Bill mentioned. So, Darvin Ham got a tough break, but he might have a chance to reboot his career and win a little bit in Milwaukee. All right, we should talk about basketball. Of course, the Lakers come sweeping in and knock the NBA Finals out of the top of our show, but we're going to get to the NBA Finals and Game 2 and the Celtics taking a 2-0 lead after a quick break. This is Beyond the Arc, and you're watching CBS Sports Network. Luka, one of those. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill hanging out on a Monday. Normally, we would talk about the finals in Game 2 much sooner in the program, but as I mentioned, the Lakers knocked them down a little bit. All right, Game 2, Bill, you were there. Celtics win 105-98. Hold the Mavericks under 100 points yet again. Take a 2-0 series lead. It looked like the Mavs were going to maybe make a run late. They went on a 9-0 run to cut it to 5 at one point, but then Derek White had a chase down block on PJ Washington, and then they ended up going away a little bit. Yeah, it was amazing. Teams that go up 2-0 in the finals are 31-5, Bill. So not an impossible task for the Mavericks, but a difficult one. You're there. Any chance that they climb back into this? How are you feeling about this?
Maybe. Look, one of those 5 was the Milwaukee Bucks 3 years ago against the Suns. And when I covered that series, I had this overwhelming sense of this thing's over, right? It's done. Chris Paul's getting a ring. And at the time, I thought I should know better, and I didn't. Here's the thing. I don't think the Mavs are likely to come back, but I'd be curious what you guys have seen, because the thing that has struck me the most in person, and I think the biggest question for whether Dallas can get back into it is, yes, Kyrie's been inefficient. Jayson Tatum's been inefficient. But Tatum's been really aggressive. Just in person, he looks confident. He's not making shots, but he's doing other things. Kyrie looks really tentative in person. He looks like he's not sure. There's uncertainty. I wonder if you see the same thing watching on TV, because if he can't find his swagger, it's not just efficiency. It's just a confidence and ability to impact the game and to believe in yourself. And ask John, if he can't find it back in Dallas, this thing is over. If going home feels different and he's different, then yeah, maybe there's a momentum shift that makes this series interesting.
I'm glad that you brought up the Kyrie thing, because we discussed it on Friday's program about whether or not the Boston Celtics have his number and whether or not the crowd was getting in his head a little bit. They booed the hell out of him again in Game 2. Didn't go great. All right, so as you saw there, they booed the hell out of him. He's 0 for his last 12 against the Celtics. This might be the curse of Lucky the Leprechaun, by the way. Since he stomped on Lucky the Leprechaun's eye, he hasn't beaten the Celtics. I wonder, previously when we talked about this, Bill, you said that you thought that he was kind of shook from the crowd. He might be.
Oh, I think there's no doubt that he is. He has been – these are the 2 worst finals games that he's ever played in his career. He is – and you could argue, given the stakes, these are the 2 worst playoff games potentially that he has played in his career. And it's hard. Look, every fan base hates a different player, right? There's guys. It's hard to overstate the actual hatred that is felt toward this guy and the way that it just oozes through this entire city. I got the free meal I told you guys about. Not free meal. I got a table at a busy restaurant last week because I wasn't a big Kyrie guy. I went to a bar over the weekend, and they asked me what I thought of Kyrie, and I said he looked shook, and the owners of the place bought me a bunch of drinks, and I was there 3 hours later than I planned on, because they hate this guy really so much. They want to celebrate anybody who even remotely shares their vision, and it comes through in these games. Ask John, I think he is shook. It doesn't mean he won't be fine in Dallas, but those 12 straight losses at the Boston Garden, those are facts. That's an actual streak that is a sample size. It's pretty telling.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an accident. And I was on the side of like, I don't feel like he is shook by this because, you know, when you think about it in hindsight, he played in the TD Garden as a player. He's already returned as a Brooklyn Net, so as a former player. So you would think whatever contention or nerves he had going into that situation, you know, have kind of been thrown to the wayside. But then again, we talk about it's been 7 years, around 7 years since he's been in the NBA Finals. It's a different level of intensity. So you put all those things into the equation and maybe it does make a difference. I think Kyrie left his swagger in Dallas. I think when he goes back to Dallas, we're going to see a different version of him. There was a video of him going into the tunnel and he held up the 5, like, we'll be back for game 5. I wholeheartedly believe that. I don't think that Kyrie is going to allow this version of himself to exist in any more games of the NBA Finals. He's got that Boston situation out of his system, and also going back to Dallas and potentially winning 2 at home, which they need to go ahead and do, obviously. You always want to defend home court. And then going into a game 5 with a tied series, defending home court gives you a little bit more confidence. Right now, their confidence as a team, not just Kyrie Irving, but the Mavericks as a whole, their confidence is shook. They went into a very loud, very tumultuous situation at the TD Garden. They went down 2 games. Boston Celtics did what they have to do. But there's nothing like a win and 2 of those at home to even the playing field, to give you your sense of confidence, like, we belong here, and this is how we need to play to make sure this series continues. I think you'll see that in Dallas for this team as a whole.
I don't know. They need him to snap out of it for sure, Ash, because if Kyrie doesn't snap out of it, they're dead in the water. This thing is already over. But he, to his credit, credited Jrue Holiday and Derek White and also Jaylen Brown for playing amazing defense on him. But he hasn't looked like himself. I mean, 16 points on 18 shots last night. They have him locked up. There's no defender that they're throwing at him where it's an easy opportunity for Kyrie. He did say he had a couple of open looks and he didn't knock them down, but he hasn't made a 3 yet in this series. He just has not looked like himself at all. It's crazy. And so I look at it and I go, if he doesn't get untracked, they are dead. And then even if he does, it's still going to be difficult for them because they need some.
It's definitely going to be difficult, but I saw Ramadan Kyrie firsthand when they faced the Denver Nuggets, who a lot of people thought were going to go ahead and be in this position with the chance to 2-beat. And I watched him kind of in that first quarter, even in the second, you were like, Kyrie, where you at? Like, come on, we get it. You're fasting. I know you're hungry, but we need you to go. I watched this switch in him in real time. And I just watched him do things on that court that I have never seen done before. And to do it against the reigning champs, to do it against one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA in Jokic, it was a masterclass. And if he can do it under those circumstances, there is nothing that goes ahead and makes me believe that going back to Dallas, back against the wall, Luka's like, Kai, I need you. I can't do this by myself. There is nothing that I think will prevent him from flipping that switch. We saw him do it in Cleveland. When LeBron James needed his help, we saw him do it. That I wholeheartedly believe that if anybody can flip that switch and to go ahead and become the Kyrie Irving this team needs to at least compete, maybe not win. John, to your point, it's going to be an uphill battle. Definitely not arguing that. But to at least make this competitive, 6-7 games, it's Kyrie Irving. He has it in him, and I wholeheartedly believe we see it in Game 3.
Yeah, he has it in him. I just look at the defenders they're throwing at him and go, it's going to have to be a superhuman effort by him. And we haven't seen it yet. I do want to talk about on the other side, though, Jayson Tatum. There's been a lot of conversation on this show and in this series about where he falls in the Celtics pecking order. Jason Kidd weighed in on that. And then Bill's got an interesting idea that we want to run past Ashley and everybody else. That'll be on the other side on Beyond the Arc right here on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill here. Check out our YouTube page as well. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Okay, so we have had a conversation on this show, and this has been a predominant conversation as well, sort of around the Boston Celtics this season and then also in the NBA Finals, about where Jayson Tatum fits in the hierarchy. Is it his team? Is he the best player? And so prior to Game 2, Jason Kidd weighed in on this topic, and then Jayson Tatum responded to that.
Well, Jaylen's the best player, so just looking at what he does defensively. He picked up Luka full court. He got to the free throw line. He did everything, and that's what your best player does.
What's your reaction to J-Kidd saying that?
No reaction. This is a team sport, right? We understand that. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have JB on our team, and we could say that for a lot of guys, right? We've all played a part in getting to where we're at, and we understand that. People try to drive a wedge in between us, and I guess it's a smart thing to do or try to do, but we've been in this position for many of years of guys trying to divide us and say that one of us should be traded or one's better than the other. So it's not our first time at the rodeo.
So Jayson Tatum does not take the bait there, but Ashley, does Jason Kidd actually believe that Jalen is their best player, or was he just trying to mess with them, or both?
I mean, a little bit of both. This is the same guy who had one of his players bump into him with a cup of water so he can get an extra timeout. I mean, I don't put anything past Jason Kidd. You know what I mean? But I also don't think it's a crazy take, especially with what we have seen, at least in the postseason, right? And I tweeted this last night because I don't think that your best player necessarily, I think everyone gets caught up in the numbers and, the statistics and things like that. But one thing that I noticed about Jaylen Brown last night, he's vocal. He's on those sidelines. He's on the court telling his guys, we can do this, take it possession by possession. And that's what, to me, the real testament of a leader is who is your most vocal guy in that locker room when you need to go ahead and get words of encouragement, when you need somebody telling you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. And I don't think Jayson Tatum is necessarily that guy, and it just may not be his personality, and that's okay. So when you talk about the leader of the Celtics team, I think both JT and JB are both drastically, immensely talented. I don't think anybody can argue that. They both do things well as a unit. They do things well separately. But if you ask me this postseason, who would be the leader of this team? It's Jaylen Brown because he is the most vocal, and I think sometimes JT, and we've had this conversation before, not only on the show, but in the course of, NBA talk, he regresses a little bit in the big moment, and he takes a back seat and allows other guys to go ahead and maybe be center stage. And when you talk about leaders don't care about anybody's feelings. I'm the captain of this ship. You guys follow me, and I will lead us to victory. And that's who Jaylen Brown's been this postseason.
And I think the discourse, I think the general discourse of who's the best player on this team and can that best player be the best player offensively at the end of games historically makes sense. You need Luka Doncic to be great and maybe to be great in some big moments for the Mavs to win this series. LeBron had to do that on his team. Giannis had to do that on his team. Joker had to do that on his team. I mean, Kobe, all these guys, Shaq, this is not new. What I think is unique and interesting is that, and I have been on the maybe Tatum's not the best player train because I thought that idea, that paradigm was significant to understanding whether or not Boston could win. And I still have an opinion about whether Kidd's right or wrong. It just turns out maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe this Celtics team as a team is a unicorn in the sense that one of the few teams in modern NBA history where literally who their best player is not even remotely significant. And if Jayson Tatum in the postseason is the fourth best player, it's not going to matter. I mean, they're undefeated this postseason when he scores fewer than 20 points, undefeated. When he shoots below 40%, undefeated. And by the way, he impacts the team in other ways. I mean, he's really, really good. I mean, his rebounding and his timely rebounding too, right? Like, I don't think all stats are equal. And he had some huge rebounds yesterday where they were, for lack of a better term, clutch rebounds, just big moments in his facilitation. And I still think you could argue that he was the third or fourth best player on the floor last night. Not because he sucked, not because he wasn't very good. I mean, he had a very inefficient night. I just think that if this Celtics team goes on to win, let's say they win 4 titles in the next 7 years. Not likely, but I don't think impossible. I don't think it's inconceivable. It's very possible that Tatum will be the Finals MVP of one, and Jrue Holiday could be of another, including maybe this one, and Jaylen Brown gets one. And if you told me that Kristaps Porzingis in 3 years was the Finals MVP, it wouldn't shock me. I think this is, and the only comp I could think of was the Detroit Pistons team that won that title 20 years ago, right? 2004. And that was Chauncey and Rip, so it was like two guys, but it was a team. And like this team, they also operated as a unit defensively, and their excellence defensively wasn't down to one or two guys and then other people kind of filling in the spaces like the Mavs have with Luka and Kyrie. And so I think Jason Kidd is right. I think he's playing mind games, and I think unlike most teams in the history of would-be champions, I don't think it remotely matters who the best or second or third best player is on this basketball team, and that's rare.
Yeah, I don't think it matters either. I do think he was playing mind games. I don't know that he believes it though, because like he's saying one thing and then on the court, they're doubling the hell out of Tatum a lot of the time, right? They're not doubling the hell, right? So like he might be saying, oh, Jalen is the best guy, but his actions say that he thinks Jayson Tatum's pretty good. And by the way, Jayson Tatum has not shot well for basically the entire postseason, but last night, Bill, as you were mentioning, the different ways that he can influence a game, almost has a triple-double. And I thought the one of the biggest plays of the entire game last night was when the Mavs were on that run, Ash, and Jayson Tatum ended up on Kyrie one-on-one defensively, and Jayson Tatum had a big steal, picked his pocket, and went the other way. And that put the end to that Mavs run. And I was like, man, that right there, I don't think that he's going to be the MVP of this series. Right now, I'd go with Jrue Holiday, and I can make the case later on. But that right there is the kind of play that you make that wins you a title.
Yeah, and I mean, also, you guys said it in so many different ways. There's multiple ways to affect the game, and I think sometimes people get caught up in, points on the board. And look, when you talk about Jayson Tatum, you're putting him in the conversation of superstars in the league. Whether or not you think he's there or on the cusp, that's a different conversation. But when you talk about the best of the best currently in the league, he's in that conversation. And when you talk about those guys, you expect certain performances, and those performances are usually dominant. And to our credit, if we wanted to go ahead and nitpick at Jayson Tatum, it would be fair to say that he regresses sometimes in big games, and he's not always the most dominant or the most vocal or the most fiery. But he's also on a Boston Celtics team, to Bill's point, where he doesn't have to be. We're not talking about Jayson Tatum on a Dallas Mavericks team where he is the main domino, and if he's not on his P's and Q's every single night the way Luka has to be, the rest of the chips around him fall. You saw it in game one. Not the most dominant. Porzingis was that night. I got you. Don't worry about it. Last night, not the most dominant when it came to scoring, but Jrue Holiday handled the weight of that. That is what the testament of a really good basketball team is, of what a deep basketball team is. So I understand people wanting the dominance from Jayson Tatum because we have kind of been waiting to see him crack into that next layer for as long as he's been in the league. He keeps getting into these positions, and you want to see him crack into that Mamba mentality, if you will, and just take the ball and take every shot and push the other guys out of the way and be like, I got this, move, move, move. That's not who he is. It probably will never be who he is. He's a team-first guy.
It wouldn't fit with this team either.
It wouldn't fit with the team, but I also don't think it's in his character. I think he is the guy who gets his teammates involved, even if it's at the detriment of his own stat line. There are some guys who have that, give me the ball, I'm going to do this myself mentality. And then there are guys like Jayson Tatum who say, I don't really need to be the center of attention. Let's just win. I think we're trying to make him be something that he will never be. And I think it's okay to accept the type of player that he is and appreciate the type of player that he is, regardless of what you want him to be.
I think especially because you're right about his mentality. He's in the perfect spot, right? I mean, he doesn't need to be that guy, and they don't want him to be because, as Bill mentioned, they're kind of the new 2004 Detroit Pistons. They've got so many different options. And we're going to take another quick timeout here. But on the other side, I want to talk about some of those other options because I have a name for you who I think of those other options might be the MVP of the series right now. This is Beyond the Arc. We're coming back on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill wrapping up on a Monday. We talked about the supporting cast. Well, it's not even really a supporting cast. It's just the cast for the Boston Celtics, right? Because they have so many players and they're all basically interchangeable. Two guys that I thought were excellent last night and excellent in this game were Jrue Holiday and Derek White. They both made massive defensive plays at both ends of the floor. Bill, you mentioned the chase down block, how much you like that. Jrue Holiday was picking people's pockets and then knocking down threes. I think you could make a case right now for Jrue Holiday through 2 games. Still got 2 more games at least to go.
Yes.
For Jrue Holiday as the series MVP.
He's mine.
You guys are on board with this?
He's mine.
He's mine too.
Yeah.
It may not last, right? I think there'll be in fact, I talked to some of the, we don't know who's going to vote, but it's the same collection of people who tend to vote for Finals MVP every year. And I've talked to 5 or 6 of them, and they have a real inclination to want to vote for Jayson Tatum. 3 of them told me, well, I haven't ruled out Tatum if he does something. But I'm with you. Jrue Holiday's been he's been amazing. And that performance yesterday, defensively, plus the was it 26 points or whatever it was. I mean, just the guy was a beast. He was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Jrue Holiday, not only what he's doing on offense, I mean, the Celtics are 33-1 when Jrue Holiday scores 14 plus. He had 26 last night, right? So offensively, just a factor. Defensively, 11 rebounds there, but being able to completely lock down Kyrie Irving, who is the second best player on the Mavs team, and also the player that they need to go ahead and have cooking in order for them to stand a chance in this series, has been instrumental, has been huge. I don't know how you have the MVP conversation, and right now it's not between just Jrue Holiday and Jaylen Brown. Jayson Tatum, I know he's affecting the games in so many different ways, and this is not a knock to him at all. But when you talk about the two consistent factors, it's JB and it's Jrue Holiday.
And Holiday didn't have a turnover.
So good.
I mean, just throw that in there.
No, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's a great point. So Tatum's got some weaknesses. He's not shooting the ball well right now. Players on both teams have different areas where there are holes in their game. Jrue Holiday is one of my favorite players to watch play basketball because there really aren't any weaknesses to his game. At the very least, he doesn't hurt you anywhere. Mm-hmm. So there could be, negative effects, as Bill was mentioning, where, he's turning the ball over or whatever, making stupid plays, but he doesn't do that. He just makes the right basketball play all the time. And then on top of that, there are games when, as Ashley mentioned, he can go off for 26 points if you need him to. And then, he's always one of the best defenders on the floor. It's just, what an incredible luxury for them to have. The Bucks should be kicking themselves. They should have never traded him. That was a huge mistake.
To go back to Ashley's earlier relationship analogy, I mean, they are going, John Horst is never gonna, baby come back, is never, ever gonna get over that decision.
Not only that, but remember, he put a whole thing in the paper. It came out the day after they traded him about how he wants to end his career in Milwaukee. His family loves it. His wife loves it. I want to be a Buck for life. And they said, yeah, this is awkward. And now who's laughing now? See, them tables, they always turn, ladies and gentlemen. They always turn.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, it worked out great for Jrue too, right? Because things kind of cratered in Milwaukee, and all of a sudden he lands on a team that is now set up. Jayson Tatum's going to get extended. Jrue just got extended. Jaylen Brown is already extended. You got Derek White. Kristaps Porzingis comes in. What an incredible job by Brad Stevens to put this team together. But they are set up not just for this season, but for many seasons moving forward. Ridiculous.
Who's laughing now, Doc? Who's laughing now, Milwaukee? Milwaukee deserves this. Anyway, continue.
Well, no, that's it. We got to wrap the show. I think that's a good place to leave it. We will be back right here on CBS Sports Network later on this week. We're going to be here on Thursday. We're going to be here on Friday. Both of those at 2 p.m. Eastern. Bill's going to catch a flight back to LA after this show. He had maybe the press box lobster. I wish him Godspeed on his flight. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, and for Ashley Nicole Moss in our Florida studio, I'm John Gonzalez. Those two will be back with you tomorrow. I'll be back on Wednesday. For now, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.